Hey everybody, this is Miles. I'm doing my Ravens report this week. Obviously, it's a bye week for the Ravens, but as we all know, the Ravens went ahead and they got the win against the San Diego Chargers, which was a great win for the Ravens. I'll break down that game, and also we'll discuss the Ravens coming up the next 8 weeks and the photos that have been released by I think the police or someone about Greg Hardy's girlfriend's injuries, and I'll address that and the NFL is supposed what is why the NFL is messed up again for the second year in a row with this domestic abuse issues. Um, Start with the Ravens against the Chargers. It was another tough game, and we all knew coming in. Philip Rivers, of course, was one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. Has been for the last 10 years. Came into the game. The one saving grace for the Ravens, I think, was the first quarter. I mean, they had first half at least. Chargers had about 10 or 11 players that went down with injuries. Um, and they were just they had that going for them. The Ravens, I think, had the Chargers been at full strength during that game, they possibly maybe win by 3. And of course, later in the game, Keenan Allen went down. We found out first we thought it was just maybe back spasms or spasms like body spasms, but it turned out he actually lacerated his kidney. Uh, or I think it was kidney or liver, and so that was definitely scary for him. So he had to leave the game toward the crucial point in the game after he just scored a touchdown. So they got some playmakers off the field for the Chargers, but they didn't really have many to begin with. I mean, Jacoby Jones doesn't really play in the wide receiver role for the Chargers at all. Malcolm Floyd is strictly a deep threat at this point. Antonio Gates has been limiting his snaps ever since he came back from his suspension. The Darius Green is no Antonio Gates. Melvin Gordon has, the first round pick hasn't really turned out to be anything for the Chargers so far. So they went against a team much like our own that had its own flaws, and they're able to stick it out. The one thing that did impress me in the game, though, after Sam Cook punted the ball and Jacoby Jones lets it bounce to the 20 and then it rolls down to the 4-yard line, the Ravens were able to hold them there. That stop was extremely crucial for the Ravens, as they were able to, I think, at least 3 times almost get safeties against that Chargers offense. I mean, they stopped Melvin Gordon. It looked like they stopped him. He reestablished on the field, and then tried to run forward, and they knocked him back again. He was in his end zone, but they gave him forward progression for the previous run before he got knocked back into the end zone. So then they stopped. I think it was not Keenan Allen, but Stevie Johnson. He tried to do a screen pass that didn't work, and they stopped him there too. So that was impressive to me. Apparently, Dean Pease gave the Ravens defense a heated speech in halftime. For the last 8 weeks, this team has been struggling on defense. They can't seem to get to the quarterback. They don't have any turnovers. The last turnover that I think they've had, it was week 3. I think it was the last turnover they've had. And that comes from the cornerbacks having to play 7-8 yards off of these receivers. They're not able to jump routes because they're too far back. They can't jam them, so they can't force pop-ups and things like that, like tip the ball up and maybe have a linebacker or a safety come get it. So I would hope that maybe in the bye week they start focusing more on look, let's try to put our cornerbacks and let's try to put our secondary guys in positions where they can make plays. We're going to go against, some even though the teams are pretty down right now, we're going to get some pretty still tough type of competition. This is the NFL. We have seen teams before, especially in the Ravens' history, to go ahead and beat us, especially the Jaguars, who we got coming up in week 10. So, I mean, they can't take this lightly. They're looking at right now, the schedule. We have after the bye, the Jacksonville Jaguars we are at home. Then we have the St. Louis Rams at home. Then we have the Browns. We're at the Browns. Then at the Dolphins. Home against the Seahawks. Then the Chiefs and the Steelers. All 3 straight home games. And then we finish off the end of the season at the Bengals. Now, we're going into the Jaguars game. I'll go back to the Chargers game real quick. When the Chargers lost a few of their offensive linemen to injury, I think around the first and second quarter, I thought, okay, now they can get after the quarterback. I think they all together maybe had 1 sack on Philip Rivers. Now, give him credit, he does get the ball out pretty fast, but when you have a makeshift offensive line, that Ravens defense, who was at full strength, should have been able to go ahead and get pressure on the quarterback. They have to find a way to consistently get pressure. They can't have any more off days anymore. No, if they're going to run the table like they said they're going to, they can't have any more off days on that defensive line. They got to put pressure on quarterbacks. You got Blake Bortles coming in for the Jaguars. Now, while the Jaguars don't have a good record, that offense is pretty potent with the Jaguars. Blake Bortles will throw interceptions, but if these cornerbacks for the Ravens aren't going to play on these receivers, he may not throw that many interceptions against the Ravens. He may not throw any interceptions against the Ravens, and that's dangerous. I think they need to force him to make tough decisions. The defensive line has to get pressure on him, and they have to make him throw the ball, like the Buffalo Bills did in a game in London. Even though the Jaguars at one point were beating on them because of defensive turnovers, the Bills were able to come back because at some point they were shut down that Jaguars offense. They do have two really good wide receivers in Allen Robinson and Allen Hurns that have pretty much gone under the radar. These guys, especially Allen Robinson, has put together quite a resume for this season with at least 3 or 4 100-yard receiving games. And so has Allen Hurns and Allen Robinson. Both together have put together 100-yard games. So they've done pretty well if you give them time. So if you don't pressure Blake Bortles like any other quarterback, like we saw Josh McCown, they're gonna tear us apart. So they have to. I know we're gonna be at home, which is great, but they got to start in this bye week focusing on how do we get pressure on the quarterback. We got to get somebody in his face. It seems like every other play, we got to have some hands in the face. He has to have to feel that pressure coming from the edges. He's got to feel something. You want Dumervil to get into midseason form by this point, start putting pressure on the quarterback, doing what he does best. Maybe hoping Jernigan, he got that 1 sack. Maybe this is the turning point for him. Maybe he starts getting more pressure as well. So you got to look at that game coming up. Now also with Steve Smith going down, there's a big blow to the offense. But now you're gonna have to see. Now they signed Joe Morgan here in this past week, who was a wide receiver for the Saints. He's another body pretty much on the field. Another guy they're hoping they just can kind of catch some balls in, until even the next season at this point. But with Steve Smith gone, now the attitude on offense is gone as well. He brought that intensity. Now, at the same time, I was telling a coworker, when people were like, well, we lost Steve Smith, we lost the attitude for the team. The difference with Steve Smith is when he goes on the field, his attitude, he kind of picks a player out on the secondary, cornerback or safety or whatever, and he goes at him, and it's like one-on-one. His intensity is more internal. It's more like directed towards another player, especially on the opposing team. It's not like he's going to be – you don't really see him in the offense going like, just get together, come on, or on the sideline, get guys into the game. He has his own intensity. He doesn't really like to share it with anybody, really. He just kind of does it by himself. Unlike Ray Lewis, Ray would go out there, and then you see him in the huddle, and he would be telling guys, and even on the sideline, he would be like, telling guys like constantly in your face, constantly trying to get you revved up for the next drive, the next play. And they haven't had that all season. Everybody says Steve Smith was that guy, but he wasn't the bring everybody together type player. He just brought his own intensity, and that's what it was. And maybe you fed off him, maybe you didn't, but it wasn't like he wasn't go out there and get you fired up. So now losing that attitude type player on offense who was able to go get the ball. Now you got Kamar Aiken, you have Marlon Brown, Joe Morgan now, Chris Gibbons, and Jeremy Ross, who are going to be your wide receivers. So it looks like Chris Gibbons, I think, and Kamar Aiken, of course, I think are to get the most touches as far as the wide receivers are concerned, just because they've caught the most passes by Flacco so far. I mean, Chris Gibbons was able to catch a 34-yard pass by Flacco. So I'm pretty sure Flacco has some confidence in him now to kind of get the ball and make plays after the catch. And Kamar Aiken, we saw in the Pittsburgh game after Steve Smith went down, we were like, oh, man, who's going to step up? Kamar Aiken stepped up. Even in the Chargers game, he stepped up as well. We saw towards the end during that drive, Flacco made some key, slant passes and, some things we haven't really seen a lot of lately. So maybe they start bringing with the receivers they have, they got to find a way to get these guys, moving. Maybe it's just like, instead of Flacco trying to throw it down deep all the time, maybe give them some opportunity to at least, let these guys create some yards after the catch and kind of make some plays after that. Now with Chris Gibbons able to get downfield, maybe he has some deceptive speed, and maybe Flacco, go ahead and get him the ball. He's been waiting to do that all season with somebody. Maybe Chris Gibbons gives him that opportunity. I also think at this point, though, I think Brashard Perriman, who they expect to come back at some point in the season, I think the Ravens just need to go ahead and sit him down for the rest of the season at this point. just IR him and just go ahead and let him heal up 100% and have him come back next year. Go to the mini camp and training camp and be ready to go next season. The Jaguars game, coming up after this week. It's another home game for the Ravens. Luckily, it's a lot better for the Ravens at this point, just for the simple fact that they went through a very tough part of their schedule. They went 2-6, and now they're coming upon an easier part of their schedule. So they got the Jaguars, who was a very beatable team, especially on the road. The Ravens are at home again, so they got some confidence beating a better team than the Chargers, and the quarterback is Philip Rivers. So I think the defense, at some point, maybe they got some confidence in this game. They made some key stops which we hadn't seen before. So maybe they get some confidence now to start making some plays. Maybe we see them start turning it deep around a bit. We'll see. They're not going to be great. I don't expect them to be a top 10 defense, but maybe they could progressively go from, I think they're ranked like 30. I think they're ranked like 26th or 27th right now. Maybe move up to maybe like 18, 17. I think that's reasonable, considering the fact that the Ravens' offense has been doing pretty well. They still put up 26 points this week. So I think the Ravens' offense, even without losing all the weapons, they can still do pretty well. Also, Dennis Pitta will be eligible to come back. He has to make a decision this bye week, though. If come Monday he's not ready to play, he's probably going to end his career and go ahead and retire, which is a sad case, for such a young player and such a crucial part to the Ravens' offense for the last, 3 or 4 years. And then you look at 5 years, and then this Super Bowl run. I mean, that's Flacco's favorite target. It would just be sad to see, 2 bad hips, but you can't really do too much. If the doctor say you can't play, you can't play, and he has to think about his family first. And we'll see what happens. I think he's going to try to give it a go. Hopefully, he doesn't re-injure himself, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. I think by Monday we'll know. But then we got the Rams after the Jaguars. The Rams, Todd Gurley right now is the best running back in the NFL. With Matt Forte going out, Arian Foster hurt, Adrian Peterson not having a really good year. Marshawn Lynch has been kind of playing banged up a little during the season. Jamal Charles is out for the year. A lot of the top, Le'Veon Bell is out for the year. A lot of top running backs are now out. Todd Gurley's the man right now. I mean, he's for the last, 4 straight games now has 100 yards and at least a touchdown. So, he's been running. When he gets an open field and he passes that second level, gets past those linebackers, he's faster than some of those cornerbacks. He can just get downfield. It's unbelievable watching that guy run. But luckily for the Ravens, they're actually they're in the top 5 in stopping the run. So I think the Ravens are going to be able to go ahead and bottle him up. If they can, obviously, I think they're going to lose that game. But I think at home, I think the Ravens will be able to bottle him up a bit. They don't really have any receiving threats. Nick Foles is not a good quarterback, as we've seen this year. So the Rams' defense is pretty solid, I think. But I think it's another game like the Chargers type game. They have a Melvin Gordon. Obviously, Todd Gurley has done a little bit more. But I think the Ravens have been able, and that's been their motto from '96, to be able to stop the run. And I think that they've been able to stop the run all season against pretty good quarterbacks. So I think they go ahead in that game and they go ahead and they stop the Rams, and they'll probably win. I think they win that by 10. I think they go ahead and win that by 10. Then they have the Browns and the Dolphins. Now the Browns just got beat by the Bengals. I think it was 31-10. They don't look good. They don't know who their quarterback is. They're in flux right now. They don't know what's going on. They don't know what to do. Any fan or coach or anything like that or GM is while you may not think Josh McCown is the quarterback of the future, he's got to be your quarterback right now. Or you pick Johnny Manziel. You got to pick one of them. You pick Johnny Manziel, you pick McCown. You got to pick one and stick with them. And you look at the Texans right now, they're going through the same problem with Ryan. They just released Ryan Mallett, but then they brought another quarterback in, and they'll probably end up rotating him out with Brian Hoyer too. So when you have that kind of, dysfunction in the quarterback position, that's probably the most stable position in the field. Regardless if the quarterback is bad or good, the coach has to make a decision look, either we're going to pull him out and we're going to sit him and that's it, and this is our guy, or we're going to stick with him until, maybe something better comes along. And that's what you got to do. You have to have some kind of continuity. When you're switching back and forth a quarterback like that, especially when it comes to getting rapport with certain players, especially wide receiver, the center, the snaps for the center, as we saw with Joe Flacco and John Urschel, when we lost Zuda down for that last part of the game because of the concussion, they struggled, snapping the ball to Flacco because they just don't have that connection. And Urschel didn't play center. So, that all that comes into play. So with that influx, I think the Ravens, even though they're at the Browns, it's a Monday night game. I think the Ravens can go ahead in Cleveland and go ahead and beat them and kind of pay revenge back for what happened earlier this season. Then they are at the Dolphins. The Ravens have been able to. Ravens fans have traveled pretty well to Miami. I think there'll be a lot of Ravens fans down there because it's warm and it will be December 6th. So it'll be a December game. So I think a lot of Ravens fans will travel down to Miami. Miami fans don't really show up for football games, especially pro football games. So I think Ravens fans will travel pretty well and provide some kind of semi-home crowd there. So I think they go ahead and win that game. Lamar Miller there is a great catching the ball at the backfield, so the Ravens have to worry about that. Definitely trying to stop him. If he can't run the ball, they'll definitely just try to get him some screen pass and try to get him open field. And then you got Jarvis Landry, who's a great speed, great punt returner. Rashard Matthews there, who's a decent wide receiver. So they got to watch out for those guys. But it's another beatable team. Then you got the Seahawks, and they're a tough game. December 13th is a flex game, so maybe they, right now it's 8:30. Maybe they push it back because the Ravens' record. We'll see what the record is by then. Maybe they're back in the playoff hunt, so they keep it a later game. But that's a Seahawks game. They're playing in Baltimore, so they don't have the advantage of the 12th man in Seattle. But by then, the Seahawks are one of those late season teams that tend to show up at the end. Marshawn Lynch, it seems like he hasn't been able to run against really good defenses lately. So I don't know what Marshawn Lynch is going to do towards the end of the season. He's also a late guy, a late type season guy where he starts running better, especially Eddie Lacy's that kind of guy. So, but they don't really have any receivers that scare me. Russell running around does scare me a little bit. That the fact that he can move around the pocket, and the Ravens have struggled even with stopping guys like Andy Dalton and them from running around. So they got to be able to find a way to contain Russell Wilson to keep him at bay, get pressure on him, and make him throw some interceptions and get some turnovers. Then they got the Chiefs. The Chiefs are definitely a winnable game. Without Jamal Charles, the Chiefs have started to tank. They're not a good team anymore. We can see that now. They just lost it. It just seems like mentally they're out of it right now. And it's another home game for us. Then we got the Steelers again. With Le'Veon Bell out like it was last season, I think the Ravens can go ahead into Pittsburgh, especially if that's the point of the season. Maybe the Ravens are out of it. They go into Pittsburgh. I mean, the Steelers come here and they say, look, the Steelers, if they don't win this game or out of the playoffs, I'm pretty sure the Ravens are going to look at that and the fans like, this is our Super Bowl right now because we're not going. Maybe we get a chance, depending on what the record is, maybe we get a chance to go ahead, knock these Steelers out. That's it, we're good. It's kind of like what the Orioles did back in 2012 when they stopped the Red Sox from getting to the playoffs. So then they got at the Bengals. Maybe the Bengals at that point right now I think they're 8-0. So maybe they start resting some players. Maybe that's just a game they go ahead and win. But depending on what the Ravens' record is, also that may be a game where the Bengals can just shut them down and not let them allow them to the playoffs because everybody knows when the Ravens get in the playoffs, they're dangerous. So it's very possible the Ravens could win out. It's very possible. I definitely think the Seahawks, the Steelers, and the Bengals games are definitely your iffy games. I think the other ones are definitely they can win those. But the Seahawks, Steelers, and Bengals, the last 3 out of 4 are definitely going to be tough ones that they're going to test their mettle and test where this team is mentally right now. Also, like we said before, like Ray said during his pregame speech, it's on Joe now at this point. He doesn't have Steve Smith out there. He is the leader on offense right now. He's been the most consistent guy. You think about it, among the targets that he has right now, he's been the most consistent on offense. He's the longest tenured Raven on offense right now, next to Marshall Yanda. And you have to think Flacco's mentality right now. Will the pressure get to him? He's like, now I got to do this without any playmakers. I've constantly told people I think I'm the best and I think I deserve this contract. Now he has to go out and prove it. I mean, I'm not saying it's fair. I'm not saying that can Flacco do it? We know he's not a Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers type guy. He has his issues where he stares down his receivers. He kind of doesn't really. He has a problem. He has an issue with always checking down, and he'll have 3 or 4 guys running around, but he'll stick with one guy, and if he doesn't get open, he'll just kind of throw it away instead of looking to a second and third receiver. So maybe we see some maturation from Flacco. Maybe we see him turn a corner. Maybe we see some new things from him. I don't know. We'll see. But it's on Flacco now. It's going to be on Flacco. Whether they win or lose now, they're going to put it on Flacco. unless it's just a defensive breakdown. But it's going to come down on Flacco. And that's not going to be like Flacco. And that's going to come down to, guys are dropping the ball. Like the guys that are starting wide receiver right now are practice squad guys or third-string wide receivers. So no one's going to expect too much out of these guys. It's on Flacco and Mark Trestman and the offensive coordinator to get this job done. So, but I'll get more into the next week as the Ravens get prepared. Maybe we'll hear more about Pitta, and that will change kind of how I prepare my video for that one. But I want to discuss the Greg Hardy incident now, but I'm going to do that in a separate video because this one's running a little bit long. So I'll make another video about that for the Greg Hardy situation and what the NFL is not doing. But anyway, thanks for watching, and I will talk to you guys next week. Hopefully next Tuesday after we found out more what the Ravens situation is injury-wise, and we'll get into that game. All right, see you. Peace.